here we go. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Little Tweaks and Giant Wins. I am so stoked to have Stacy Raske with me today. Stacy is badass. Her wisdom is absolutely over the top, amazing. And her book, I'm going to show you if you're watching on my YouTube channel, look at her book. And this is when I read her book, how many pages I tagged and how many red marks and pink marks I put in this book. And it helped me. You're the first chapter, girl, the first chapter in your book was like, pow, it hit home with me so deep. I had to put the book down and just go and think and reflect for a little bit. So Stacy Raske, please tell everybody who you are and where you're from and why you are such a badass alpha woman.
Oh my goodness, Jill. Thank you so much. It's such an honor to join you for our chat today. And thank you so much for the props in my book. I'm like, well, damn, I need to go back and read it again.
Right?
I'm like, you know how people say like, the musicians, like when the artist just fully leaves it on the track or leaves it in the album, right? Like they just leave it there. And I feel like in many ways, when I wrote this book, there's so much that I left there. Then I'm like, oh, wait, what did I write? But I've got to re-record the audiobook again. So I'll get a chance to go through it here in a minute. But yeah, wow. Let's see. You said I specifically am a best-selling author, speaker, Iraq War veteran, badass biker chick, leadership mentor, authenticity alchemist, confidence curator, and success coach, empowering revolutionary leaders to shatter the invisible ceiling and effortlessly elevate their lifestyle, leadership, and legacy while enjoying the ride. And I would say I've kind of always been that alpha personality type. I've always been that high achiever and eventually matured into the high performer. But I've always had, what I call the influential alpha, which is that beautiful balance between a high sensitivity and a high sensation seeking. So it's the empathy and the drive. And so many of us, men and women who have that inherent positive alpha leadership qualities learn to sort of through life and wounds and traumas and just sort of our society and culture in general to wall off the empathy side, even though we feel all the feels all the time, and really lean into the drive, right? So we can always be in that action space, but really transforming myself and my story and allowing myself to be the leader that I'm called to be and creating the impact that I'm called to make in the world, really living my purpose, came from allowing the integration of both sides, the masculine and the feminine energy, and allowing myself to lead with all of who I am in that balanced way. And I help leaders do the same.
Okay, so that was a lot, and a lot of really amazing things. I mean, authentic, empowering, just a lot of really great things. Break it down. Take it down to how does one get there? And I ask this with, I heard you on a podcast recently, and of all of the people that I listen to, everybody has one thing in common that I hear, and it's that we all had a shitty childhood. We all grew up in dysfunctional homes, and we all grew up with, being, just emotionally, beat down, physically beat down, bad shit happens, parents that just were just horrible parents. But there's a way that we all have to come out of that. What is it that you teach, that you coach, without giving away all your secrets, but what is it that we really truly need to manage within ourselves to get to that influential that you talk about?
So I am, again, lead by example. So it's always leaning in and living my journey. So what I dove into in empowering and healing myself was like, okay, it's get to the root, get to the root, get to the root. I mean, literally like my human design, my soul blueprint, everything about who I am is about what's the shortcut? What's the hack? What is the easiest way to get the fastest result and the biggest result in like the simple, how do I do it? And underneath all of it is like, what is that thing I can do? And what I found is it's boundaries. Boundaries is that skill set that most people are totally lacking. And the concepts, the way people teach it are, I mean, for the shock value, I always say, you know, all the gurus are wrong, but most of the way people are explaining it is it just falls short. Everyone's framework of understanding is incorrect or only part of the story. So it's like, okay, what can I focus on that I know will change everything? And boundaries as a skill that falls under the umbrella of self-management and self-mastery changes everything, because really it was all about building a relationship with myself, because it's the one relationship we don't nurture. It's the one thing we don't focus on achieving or striving for. Everything's external, everything's conditional. So when we lean inward and look at, okay, what are the things that I need to do to improve my relationship with myself, which then in turn changes my relationship with everything else and everyone else, boundaries is a beautiful place to start.
In your book, you talk about boundaries with consequences, and that hit home with me regarding my ex-husband. I actually wrote in here, I had to learn to do this with blank. We'll just call him Mr. Underwood. I should have done it years prior. So talk to us about boundaries with consequences and what that means and how learning that can help everyone.
So the most interesting thing when I explain boundaries is boundaries are not for anyone else. Boundaries are for you.
Yep.
Boundaries are simply looking at your little bubble of the world, right? And saying, this is what I will and will not allow in my bubble, because we cannot control others. So the simplest understanding of boundaries is its responsibility. What am I responsible for? What am I not responsible for? So for example, if I have a boundary of no disrespect and my significant other is disrespecting me by word vomiting because, you know, they're just because they've got their shit. What I have control over is me. And if my boundary is clear that I will not allow disrespect in my bubble, because no disrespect is my boundary, the consequences are what we have to be clear on. And consequences really are, how do we respond so we can hold to the boundary? Consequences are not for the other person. Consequences are us having clarity on our response. That means we are holding to the boundary we have set. Because again, too many people focus on boundaries in the wording, the energy, the concept of you're not allowed to do blank to me. That is nothing but victim energy right there. That is disempowered energy. You are giving complete control and power away to somebody else. But like I said, boundaries are responsibility, what you are responsible for and what you're not, AKA what you have control over, you, and letting go of all the shit you cannot control, other people. And any of us who've been married or have children, it fucking sucks, right? We would like to be able to at least have a little bit of influence, but the more we build that relationship with ourselves, the more influence you have over others. And so really, if you want to have a little more control, get your shit together. But back to consequences. Consequences really are, the clarity of how you will enforce or hold to your boundary. So this is where planning comes into play, whether we're talking about holding to boundaries with your time, right? How think about all the ways that we disrespect our own time, cancel on ourselves. Let me just fit this in, right? Because we're in hustle mode. What are the ways that we can circumvent that? Or what is the consequence with ourselves? We have to go into the plan, understanding our habits and our cycles of sabotage. Same thing when interacting with others. If someone does disrespect us, okay, I have the plan of what the consequence is not cool. I will not accept, or I will not tolerate being talked to that way or being disrespected. So I'm done with this conversation. We'll finish it later when everyone's calmed down. Right? Like that's the consequence in that moment. That's the consequence, is that I am no longer engaging in this conversation and I'm holding to my boundary.
I love it.
So this is where I see the biggest challenge with so many parents too, right? How many people are drained, exhausted, parenting their children, telling their kids, you need to be in bed, but my kids don't listen. Well, that's because there's no consequences. And the key with consequences is removing the emotion. We're not going to hold to a consequence if we're pissed off, right? Kids, significant others, nobody's able to learn our boundary when we're upset and we're just word vomiting back, right? We're in that trigger, that reaction. But when you go into these situations where we know we're constantly having our boundaries challenged because we are in these relationships every day, this is the way we can have the plan. And the more we have a plan, the less emotional we become about it. Like, no, go brush your teeth, get changed, be in bed by 9:00. And you can communicate the consequence in advance. If you're not, guess what? No TV time tomorrow. No iPhone, whatever it is, right? There's a consequence. And you have the clarity, you communicate it, and then you've got to be the adult for yourself and hold to the consequence. If you say it and they don't follow through, you have to do it. And there's always a training period for relationships we're already in. So guess what? Shit gets worse before it gets better, because people have to learn, oh, guess what? So-and-so's got boundaries now.
Right.
So, yeah.
I've said for years that a relationship is a negotiation, and you call it boundaries. And for me, it's a negotiation of, you don't get to do that to me. Now, you mentioned something that I also wanted to talk to you about. You said the word sabotage and sabotage cycles and your inner critic. In your book, you talk about that a lot. And that really, that spoke to me volumes. So share with us this sabotage cycles and our inner critic flare-ups.
Oh, yeah,
I love
absolutely. That. Yeah. Well, I think most people think about sabotage as this kind of singular thing, but really, I mean, excuse me, we understand we're changing habits. So we're not sabotaging all the time. We have certain scenarios where we're more likely to sabotage ourselves. And we go through these success and sabotage cycles, especially as high performers. Yep. Most of us, again, thinking about high sensitivity, high sensation seeking, we can go into action mode, drive, sensation seeking, get some shit done, and get to the desired result easily. And if it's something we want, cool, we get it. But getting what we desire pushes against our current capacity to allow ourselves to have the abundance, the fun, the money, the love, whatever it is that we desire. Like we have a set abundance capacity that we must expand. So when we go over that limit with, ooh, got what I wanted, then we sabotage. And it happens in cycles. And there's different, we can overlap short cycles and big cycles. Like you could have one day, like you're just tired, and then you just decide to eat the whole pint of Ben and Jerry's, but you're done and you're back on your eating regime the next day, right? Small cycle. But in the meantime, you could be working on a big goal, big expansion in your business, your team. And again, have that happening more slowly over time. And then you get the big win, the big thing happen, big growth and expansion. And then we start to tank, right? We start to not show up in our business. We start to not do the things for ourselves that got us to the success, because it's triggering the deepest inner worthiness wounds that say, I'm not good enough, worthy, or deserving of what I desire. And that's the stuff that triggers the inner critic.
And how do we get rid of that? Because it's just complete bullshit. It's terrible. It's awful. And I know that I have experienced that as well. And does that kind of go along with the imposter syndrome too? That's like, the real big word of the year is imposter syndrome. So how do we not do that? How do we know that trigger, and how do we get past it?
So the biggest thing for me was making friends with that voice.
Okay.
Making friends with my inner critic and realizing that, we call it the doubt monster. We say imposter syndrome, like it's this disease. We say the inner critic, like it's this person, which most of the time originated from someone else in our childhood.
Right.
It was not our voice originally. So the biggest thing that I did, and really even kind of going through my book, is making friends with that voice and no longer judging it, because that's the biggest trap that we get in, is not when we feel the feels of like, oh, discomfort, and we have that doubt thought or the inner critic says something. It's what immediately follows that, which is, there it is again, Jesus, blah, 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 right? We judge ourselves for experiencing the inner critic, or even thinking back to the boundaries. We start doing that. We judge ourselves for not holding to the boundaries, rather than just observing with curiosity and looking at, what can I learn here? So my inner critic became a messenger of, what do I need to address? What do I need to feel? What am I not acknowledging within myself right now? And so it improved that relationship, that inner dialogue. That's like, oh, what is going on? Why am I feeling this discomfort?
Yeah.
Now it's at a place where I've made such good friends with my inner critic that if by any stroke of whatever, it starts to flare up, it's so minimal. I see it so quickly and I'm like, no, we're good.
I love that.
Yeah, I don't even have to necessarily use tools or techniques at this point to quiet that voice.
Right.
Because I just acknowledge and like, oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah. I love that. I love that, because I've learned that a lot lately, especially from reading your book. It's like, oh, wait a minute. And I've had to really rethink some of the things in my life. So that makes a lot of sense. And I've also heard that voice be termed as the bitch voice. We've got our bitch voice and our boss voice, and you have to really pay attention to which one is talking. And I love that. Make friends with the inner critic.
Well, just before we move on, there's a lot to understanding that voice, right? Those inner worthiness wounds are the deepest wounds of our inner child.
Yeah.
Right. So it's that part of ourselves, our 4, 5, 6, 7-year-old self, that's flaring up and causing trouble, because that shows up as the inner rebel too, which causes the issues. So, the more we can observe it as that part of ourselves, like, oh, that it's a child speaking to us, Or as I have other people who teach their audiences and their clients is you change the voice. If all of a sudden it's Donald Duck or it's Mickey Mouse talking to you in that voice, it makes it easier to take the power away from it.
Yep.
And regardless of how you reframe the role of the voice, making friends with it is so important to just observe. And then more than anything, what can you learn from the message?
Outstanding. I love that. That makes so much sense. Tell me about, I think I've heard you talk about your the mirror trick, the mirror exercise. Tell us about that.
Ooh, I love mirror exercises.
Oh, tell me.
Yeah. So when so having the boundaries in place, it's an energetic layer of protection, because usually we don't have boundaries. We don't have those layers of protection. We learn growing up to create walls instead.
Mhm.
And one of the ways that we can really powerfully begin to dismantle the walls while building a good relationship with ourselves is doing mirror work. We're great at looking at ourselves, but rarely looking into ourselves, having that conversation with the soul of who we are and really deeply connecting. And so, I was mentioning that abundance capacity, right? Where we block it. And those walls are kind of that exterior to that cup, in a sense of like, nope, no more, we're full. Boop. Wall is up, right?
Yep.
So to expand your abundance capacity, your ability to receive, if you're doing the mirror work and saying, I love you in the mirror until you believe it, you are filling your cup and expanding your capacity. That is receiving abundance, the abundance of love from yourself, which again is that foundation to every single thing that we do. The more we can be in that place of true self-love, the more we are showing up at our highest level, truly being of service, activating things like attraction, whether it's marketing your business and sales, or finding a healthy, aligned significant other. It doesn't matter, whatever, or money. We want to attract to the things we desire. But we've got to do it from that place of that full cup of self-love. So when you do that, it starts to break down and dismantle the wall. Now, sometimes you go to do it and it doesn't work really well. So we have to think about the concept of a release before receiving, because if we're so emotionally constipated, we don't really have room to add anything, even if it's positive. We got to let some shit go first. So I often encourage people to do the mirror exercise and start with, I forgive you, until you mean it. Because that's really where, that's the driving force is, we can do all the work we want to raise the ceiling, but if we're not lifting the floor by letting that shit go, and the deepest, the strongest part of that floor is our shame. Everything, shame drives everything, not fear. Fear is the surface emotion fueled by the shame that we are hiding within ourselves. So we don't show up, we don't be vulnerable, we're not authentic in what we're doing. So releasing that shame with I forgive you makes so much room and space to finally receive the I love you.
Wow. We're just going to let that sit there for a minute. Wow. The thing about that, that is so powerful. So how does one make certain that you don't cross the line of your self-love be turning into, there's a difference between cocky and confident, right? You know what I'm trying to say here? So I love myself so much. How do you not cross the line of turning that into an asshole, a narcissistic asshole, or too cocky? How do you not cross that line?
They're not even in the same realm of existence.
Okay.
That's the unfortunate contamination of our culture, that people who are arrogant and cocky and narcissistic, that is not fueled by self-love. That's fueled by self-loathing.
There it
That
is.
ego is the biggest wall that we have for people to hide behind. I call it the puffer fish. When I felt my ego being scratched, or pushed against, I would immediately go into defensive mode. And when I became defensive, I would puff up like a puffer fish. I'm like, what? How dare you? No, I am not wrong. How dare you even infer, right? Thinking about some of my old relationships, even in the early decade of my marriage, I was always so defensive because, again, at the deepest root, I was so insecure. I had so much shame that I embodied that not enough, not worthy, not deserving. And the more I felt that darkness and that shame and tried to reject it or hide it, the worse I became externally. More ego, more of an asshole. That was just kind of like, you know what? I'm going to reject you before you can reject me. So I'm just going to be a dick.
Oh, okay. That's big right there. That's powerful.
Yeah. And so the flip side of that is genuine confidence comes from a full cup. And confidence does not diminish anyone else. Genuine confidence radiates outwards in a way that elevates and inspires others. It paves the way for others to step into their own. That's why I say, when I work with my clients, with all these leaders, it's helping them shift from intimidating, because there's still the wall and the mask and the insecurity, no matter how successful they are on the outside, and shifting into influential, which is that balanced, authentic, emotionally available, confident, responsible leader. Big difference. And the energy of it's so different. I mean, a lot of people know, they're like, God, Stacy, you're so confident. And yet I never go into a room needing to be loud, needing anything. And that's what it is, right? I don't need anything because my cup is full.
And you filled your own damn cup.
Exactly. Everyone's getting the overflow. And it's not ever even having to say, Stacy, you're confident. It's what people feel in my presence. And it's the confidence translates as people feel safe and people feel comfortable. That's confidence.
I love that. That's beautiful. So you coach this. Tell me about your coaching business.
So it's coaching, it's mentorship. However, everything we do is so different from everyone else. It's not about content consumption. It's about experience. Our process is very experiential from start to finish. It's something we live and we learn through by doing and experiencing these things. And what I discovered, because again, lead by example, it's all right, what works for me? Everything that works, I'm going to distill it down and then teach it to my clients, because I work with people who are just like me. High performers, I want it yesterday. So, okay, how can we quantum leap your results without bypassing anything? Because every time we hit a plateau or an invisible ceiling or an internal wall, or hit up against something feeling less fulfilling than we desire, or, we feel that wealth of untapped power and potential that we're not accessing, right? We're hitting those walls. And so it's and again, high performers, we want it yesterday. So why do steps 2 and 3 if we could jump to 27? So we're great at bypassing. So it's quantum leaping forward without bypassing anything because we're addressing physical, emotional, and spiritual at the same time, integrating it all, and then supporting the integration of this new identity and way of being into your life and your leadership. So it's amazing how many times, marriages are transformed at the same times as a business as a massively scale, because all of a sudden they're like, wait, I want to do this as an offer. I want to show up in this way. They're just really, truly owning their power and their influence as a leader, as a lover, as a parent.
I love that. That's awesome. I want to say, if you don't mind, so you're an Iraq veteran. Bless you and thank you for serving our country.
Oh, you're
I
welcome.
really appreciate that very much because I value freedom. And so you were part of that. So thank you so much for that.
You are welcome.
So what advice would you give to our listeners if they're struggling with all of these, with boundaries, with self-love, with shame? What's some good, solid advice and words of wisdom that you could share to narrow it all down?
Yeah, absolutely. Right. The number one thing is we want the big result and we want it quickly. Right.
Yes.
So we discount and undervalue the simplest changes, the simplest and smallest changes. However, I share in my book, my very first routine, right after my rock bottom moment, which was only 6 years ago at the time we're recording this, that it was literally get out of bed and make my bed, like just make my bed. And it was really just make my bed and brush my teeth. That was it. And that transformed, that was the catalyst to where I am right now. Something so small and so simple. You don't have to say, okay, I'm starting a new routine tomorrow and showing up differently tomorrow and doing 10 things right out of the gates. That's how we sabotage ourselves.
Yeah.
So just pick one thing. Could be drink more water. It's just a one thing within your control. If it's a business goal, it's all right, one person I'm going to follow up with today or reach out to, whatever it is. Pick one thing. Simple and small and simple is so much better. So and where you are starting, this is not a competition. It doesn't matter how successful you look externally or not in the eyes of other people. It doesn't matter. And if you start today and jack it up tomorrow, it doesn't matter. Just start again, right? We trigger that control and the perfection all the time that, oh, I got 2 days, 3 days into the week. Perfect. Then I jacked up today, so I'm done for the week. I'll start again fresh next week. No, start now. You just realized you skipped your thing. Just do it now. Or, oh crap, I forgot to do it yesterday. Do it today. It's fine. Right? It's not all or nothing. It's the little baby steps and being consistent. So for me, I just used a paper tracker, and that's one of the resources that comes with my book on the routines tracker. But we've got to start with those simple routines of learning how to show up for ourselves before jumping into the boundaries piece. Because there's certain, it's just like beginning to date yourself, right? You're just kind of messaging a little bit back and forth in the routines piece. Like I'm dabbling here before we start getting a little more intimate and getting to know ourselves and getting honest enough to create boundaries. And even before that is a lot of that release, right? Needing to release a lot of that emotional baggage. So it's a process. So starting small is better to getting a big result. That's why I always say everything for me started with just make my bed, brush my teeth. Got me here.
Little tweaks done consistently every day equals giant wins.
Mm-hmm.
So 6 short years ago, because that is short years. That goes by so fast. You were at your rock bottom. And then you just did that one little teeny tiny thing to get up, make my bed, and brush my teeth. And now you are in an amazing place. You are an amazing coach. I actually heard someone in my Apex entrepreneur group say a few weeks ago that he spent 4 hours with you, and it absolutely was life-changing and far, far greater results in that short amount of time than any therapist had given him in years. So what you do works, and your book is amazing. Tell everyone where they can find you and where they can follow you to hear your words of wisdom every week, every day.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that. I appreciate that so much. And I always lean back to the power of holding space for other people, for them to truly feel safe and know that someone deeply understands what they're experiencing. And it helps them give themselves permission to go where they need to go and release what they need to let go of. So the best place to find me is either stacyraske.com. It's kind of that central hub for all things that are happening in my world. And I also encourage you to download my Influential app available on Apple and Google Play. And the cool thing with the app is you can listen to my podcast. It's right there in your pocket. You can access the book, my free resources, link to the free group, all of the different things. And finding a community is vital. That's other than the one
Amen.
tiny change every single day, having a community to support you is so important. I mean, I've created a very powerful community component to all the work that I do, all the programs that I offer with myself and my other team of expert coaches who all have their lanes and their zone of genius, and we work together. And having community outside of that, it is I think back to all the times when I was suicidal, and every single one of those times was when I was lacking community, when I truly was so disconnected from others while going through such a deep disconnect within myself. So the more we have community to lean on, there's such a great mirror back to us, all the things that we may be missing or having lost that connection to when we're going through those rough times, through the dark night of the soul periods in our lives. Community changes everything.
I had no idea. You just dropped a real big bomb that almost wants me to cry right now. I'll try to wait until we're done. You just said all the times that I was suicidal.
Yeah.
Girl.
Multiple times.
Oh my God. That's,
yeah.
I would never have guessed that about you, because you have you so have your shit together. So help anybody right now who is thinking they are suicidal. Give us some more words on that. We have to help those people.
Oh my God. Gosh. Yeah. So every time I was in that place, it was being so trapped within myself. And that's why that community piece is so important, because I was trapped within myself while also having no connection to anything external. So of course it's hard to feel like there are things to live for or that things get better. And the interesting thing as I've gone through the journey is none of us are alone. There are almost everyone understands what you're going through because we've all been there. Yeah. It is amazing how many highly successful people, amazingly powerful people have been in that place. And it's looking at the real reason we feel that way, because it does feel overwhelming when it's internal. But there's always help. There's always somebody to understand. And the moment we're willing to share even a little bit of that with someone else, it changes everything, because none of it is our own burden to carry. Usually we're carrying the burdens of others that are not ours to begin with. And that's why we feel like that. I always felt like the black sheep. I never fit in. That's some of that alpha energy. Like, we tend to not fit into the paradigms or the social groups or any of the bullshit that everybody else does. We just don't fit in. And so experiencing a ton of trauma and a ton of rejection and a ton of wounding, it catches up. So yeah, definitely share with someone else. And I would say most likely not someone in your immediate circle, because they're some of what's contributing, not on purpose, but I found it was reaching out externally to someone neutral who was prepared to support me in my journey. And there's so many resources. We have the crisis helplines. We have, for me, it was the vet center, because they specialize in trauma. So reaching out to any of those free resources with people who are prepared and able to support you through that.
Wow. God bless you for what you do. Wow. That's some serious, wonderful words of wisdom to everyone. So I hope that absolutely everyone listening to this will seek out Stacy on her socials, on her app, get her book, listen to her podcast. Your podcast is the bomb, girl. It really is. You have an amazing platform, and your voice and your message and what you teach and what you coach is huge. I mean, again, the book, I love this. I love the name of this book, Be a Boss and Fire That Bitch. This book is amazing. It really was very impactful to me personally. So I hope that everyone will go and get your book. You have been a jewel today. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with everyone.
You are so welcome. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. All right, my dear, any final words of wisdom? Any final things that you want to say to the world?
Well, I think we talked a lot today of what is a lot of this high functioning disconnect, right? Where we can be super, super, super successful on the outside and really struggling internally. Mm-hmm. So it's time to nurture the most important relationship you have in your life, which is the one with yourself. Amen. And it is the tiny little baby steps, and it changes everything, because you truly can be, do, and have it all. It's about giving yourself permission to do it, to have it, to be it.
Yeah. I wrote that down. I told you before we started. So whenever I read a book, I have my bookmarks, my Jill Underwood bookmarks. And on the back of the bookmark, I always make notes about the book. My strategy is that so that someday if somebody comes into my library and needs a book to read, they read the bookmark. And yes, so on my bookmark, I actually wrote, Jill, you have permission to be successful, abundance mindset. You are good enough for greatness, and all things are possible. So, and I truly believe that. So I love that you talk about relationship with ourselves, because it really is internal, and we really don't have to take on the external bullshit in our world. And there's a lot of it now with these, I call them stupid socials.
One side or the other on any topic. I don't even know.
Yeah. But the main thing is that we don't have to look. We don't have to listen. I choose what channels I want to watch. I choose what people I want to listen to. I choose my podcasts. I choose my tribe, and I choose me.
Mm-hmm. And it's boundaries. It's boundaries that I am protecting my sacred space, my bubble. And I choose what I feed my soul, right? How am I choosing to nourish my soul? By the things I watch, the things I read, the things I listen to, what I eat, what I drink, who I surround myself with. I have big vision. I'm called to create a legacy of impact. I'm on the way to do that. And I know every single one of those elements is vital to either creating success quickly or slowing things down with distraction.
Amen. Amen, sister. You are so cool, so badass, and I value you very, very much. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. And you are so welcome.
All right. Take care, everybody. We'll talk to you soon. Love you. Bye-bye.